Harrison Price for Friday, March 21st, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the Historic Wall Center. And this program, a presentation of Bet365. Matt Sakaris alongside Blake Price, four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson, hitting switches, conducting things. And I'll say this off the top. Another fun game last night. I know it didn't go the Vancouver Canucks way, but when we talk about meaningful games in March, much like last April when we were talking about getting back to the playoffs, there is just nothing like these games with stakes in the National Hockey League, either during a playoff push or in the Stanley Cup playoffs themselves. We've spent much of this season discussing how the Canucks are low event and not the most entertaining team, but this week with the chips down, we've seen a couple of fun games here in Winnipeg and St. Louis.
Yeah, we have, and to some degree, the Canucks have risen to the occasion. I think there's going to be room for criticism as to whether or not this team looks like they are a playoff team, whether or not they are capable of being a playoff team. But they have shown a pulse. They have shown that they do understand some level of the stakes that are involved here. I think some players have risen to the occasion. They're just going to need to see buy-in from a bigger group. That's all.
Yeah. Look, one thing that is becoming very apparent, and Suter was terrific against the Jets, but he was not terrific last night. And when he's not terrific, they are short on center iceman. They are short on center icemen who can either drive play, drive a line, or at the very least get them that offensive threat that they're going to require here down the stretch. Let's start with the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. We're going to point forward to the game against the Rangers and JT Miller to go in detail on last night's game against St. Louis. Overall, are the Canucks better off without JT Miller? Blake, what says you?
I think they are. I mean, everybody knows the kind of player that he is. And, you can point to certain moments where JT Miller is so missed by this team, obviously. But he is a strange cat in terms of, overall, he's a strange cat, I think. But he's also a strange cat in terms of, is he a team guy or is he an individual guy?
That's a great question, and one I plan to take on here in this block, Blake.
Because I think he's a team guy within the context of being an individual guy, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. Because I think you could make a strong argument that he's a selfish player. Mm-hmm. That he's a selfish guy on the ice as a hockey player.
So you voted yes.
As a person.
You voted yes on the poll. They're better off without him.
Yes.
I did too. In the short term, they are a lesser offensive team without him, and they may miss the playoffs because of that trade.
Yeah.
Long term, you have to be able to coexist harmoniously with coworkers. You can't continuously put your emotional impulses above the team. And we saw that with JT. Now, this is a matinee game tomorrow, so no morning skates. The buildup, of course, will be Elias versus JT, which Elias will absolutely hate. JT may. JT may say he hates it, but I'm not sure he does. And here's the thing about Miller. And we discussed how good he was for the New York Rangers when he first got there. He's pointless in 3. He's goalless in 9. Has just 4 points in that stretch as the Rangers have lost ground in the playoff race. They're 3-5-2 in their last 10. Played an absolute stinker and lost at home to the Calgary Flames earlier this week. And this was after 10 points in his first 6 games following the Four Nations break and 18 points in 20 games overall as a New York Ranger. So he's been pretty good there en masse, just not recently.
But look who's only a few points behind him now since the trade.
Yes.
Elias Paterson.
Yeah, and it's hilarious because Elias was bad, JT was up. JT's been bad, Elias is up.
Yeah.
Now, we brought you that story earlier in the week on JT Miller and some of the comments he made, and some of them were very self-reflective. He has made some other comments here this week, and let's read those. So, quote, "It's all about playing hard for yourself. Nothing feels better than when you string a bunch of wins together as a team and you're leaving your balls on the line and playing hard, cussing out yourself, having an FU match with a teammate like it happens. That's part of hockey. The game is a very sensitive place these days and turning into more of a self-aware ego style of game. Everybody's a good player nowadays. Everybody's skilled. You see the shit guys are trying on the ice. The game is a very look-at-me game. I'll take the warts for being a competitive guy all day long. For me, it's a lost art to give a fuck." There is so much to unpack there, but this seems very much like these are veiled shots at Elias Paterson when he talks about a sensitive place these days, when he talks about FU matches with teammates, when he talks about self-aware ego style of games. And look, I'll take the words for being the lost art of giving an F. Like, I don't think giving an F is a lost art at all. I think a very high percentage of National Hockey League players give an F. Frankly, give more than one F. Care deeply about wins and losses and their own performance. I'm not sure where that's coming from other than maybe JT trying to separate himself from Elias Paterson or from other members of the Vancouver Canucks who aren't as outwardly emotional as he is during the 60 minutes of an NHL game. What did you make of those words?
I think we might be a little bit guilty of being of reading those words from our perspective, and we are colored in where we're seeing it. But to me, there's a lot of, and he keeps saying, "Oh, it's about Twitter, and it's about look at me, and it's about team." To me, I read those words, I see selfishness. I see him trying to say his way is the right way. What I'm doing, this is real. But that's just still making it about him. And you could make the argument, hey, do you like North-South players? Yeah, and he's a North-South player. But the guys that are trying shit out there on the ice, they're trying shit out there because over 100 years of playing in the National Hockey League, coaches have figured out how to defend North-South players in a lot of circumstances. So the plays that players are trying right now are the new school attempts to keep you on your toes, surprise you, and do things that are not yet coached against. And that's called, advancement in a sport. It's not selfishness necessarily, and that's what
they're
he's
more
missing.
Skilled than ever before, and they're deploying that skill in ways that we haven't seen before. Let me ask you this. Do you expect any kind of incident, fireworks, fight, words, whatever, tomorrow? Do you think he'll say something to Paterson? Do you think he'll earmark Paterson and try and lay him out with a hit?
I think hitting is hard because it risks you being in a precarious position defensively and all that sort of stuff. I would be surprised if he lines him up. I mean, if the opportunity presents itself, perhaps. I'm not saying it can't happen, but more what I'm thinking, Matt, in the corner, battling for the puck. Does the elbow get up? Does the stick come across the lower part of the back? When you're in tight quarters, just those little things, I think that's more likely than actually taking yourself out of position because you need to paste them in a perpendicular hit. I don't think that necessarily happens.
Well, I'm expecting something, and I'm accepting something because I think what's at stake here for JT Miller is pride. And I think it's his defining characteristic, and I think his pride has been deeply wounded by what happened here this season with the Canucks. That the organization chose Elias, who embodies the direction of the game is going that he disagrees with, over him. that Rick Tocchet and Quinn Hughes, two people I think at one point he considered allies, eventually reached the conclusion that it was JT who had to go, that he was charged with toughening Elias up. And when he went too far, the organization didn't have his back. We've said it many, many times about JT. When his emotion is properly channeled, he's the type of guy that you want on your side. If his emotion is properly channeled, he's like a furnace that can heat the whole house. But the cost of that is when the emotion isn't properly channeled.
Yeah.
And I think he's emotionally erratic enough and selfish enough, as you say, Blake, to put his impulses ahead of the team. So, and I think he rationalizes that with the "at least I give an F" explanation that we just read. And I think he's hurt that the Canucks were willing to enable that for as long as they enabled that, and then drew a line when other people's feelings could no longer tolerate that.
He is the ultimate double-edged sword, Matt. He is
for sure.
so able to make a difference in the positive and so able to make a difference in the negative.
For sure. A tremendous hockey player. If he only was able to avoid those outbursts, the tantrums, the impulses, boy, what a player he was. And look, if he was a Gretzky or Lemieux level player, heck, if he was even a Quinn Hughes level player, you would tolerate it. But he's not quite there.
Yeah.
And so the Vancouver Canucks could no longer tolerate it. And we'll see how long this bid with the Rangers, his second bid with the Rangers, lasts. The daily poll question, a presentation of Surrey Mitsubishi. And everybody at the dealership and beyond is trying to get EP40 back to the top. Pretty successful here of late. Every time he scores a point, you save $500 the next day on any new or pre-owned vehicle. If he gets 2 points like last night, you can go to Surrey Mitsubishi today and save $1,000 on a new or pre-owned vehicle. You got to mention Sekeres Price. The offer is valid until the next game day, so you have till tomorrow. Time to cheer EP40 back to the top. Score more, save more value, more savings. Bring them any offer. Surrey Mitsubishi will beat it. Visit 13820 104th Avenue in Surrey. Our top story today brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Brock Boeser's heroics not enough as a 4-3 overtime loss in St. Louis drops Vancouver below the playoff bar. 76 points, one back of St. Louis with the game in hand, one ahead of the Calgary Flames, who win last night, who have a game in hand over Vancouver. Blake, there's many different places we can start with this game. Do you want to start on the overtime winner? Do you want to start on the game-tying goal? Do you want to start on Brock Boeser? Where do you want to commence our evaluation of what was a spirited game with all sorts of stakes and 2.5 hours well spent, if you ask me?
Well, you tell me, are you ahead of the game as the road team by just making the game shorter? But it's a risky, they didn't play the first period. But they got away with it.
Should say 2 hours well spent. Then you're right.
Yes.
First period.
But that's a whole 20-minute period where you could have got a goal, right? Like if you're playing like you play later, maybe you've got a lead. And hey, they got a point. It helps. It just kicks the can down the road. Like you can talk about the heroic effort of Brock Boeser getting 2 goals and all that's great. A hot hand is going to come in handy, but all you've done is kick your can down the road. You haven't fallen, but you haven't climbed either. So to me, it's a lot of energy wasted. You've sapped Quinn Hughes, and to what end? Again, you've just kicked the can down the road. So that's hard. That's a hard one to take.
Yeah, well, it's a hard one to take in part because of all the momentum you have at the end of regulation, where you're able to score a huge goal when St. Louis probably feels as though they've got their 2 points and their 2 regulation points. And look, it's a little of column A, a little of column B sort of game to dissect. The Elias Paterson turnover in overtime, and I realize he's surrounded by 3 St. Louis Blues. He doesn't have a lot of great options there in terms of keeping possession, but still he fumbles the puck. It goes back the other way. DeBrusque and the line change. I mean, that doesn't help matters either. And look, that as you say, whitewashes what is a pretty compelling finish to the game.
Mm-hmm.
Brock with his 2 goals. He's up to 201 now as a Canuck. He's the 3rd fastest Canuck to 200 goals behind only club legends Pavel Bure and Trevor Linden. I mean, that is a goal. If the Canucks win this game, Blake, and particularly if the Canucks win this game and happen to go on and make the Stanley Cup playoffs by a slim margin, we are talking about that goal for years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a scintillating goal to begin with. Buzzer beater, just as March Madness is going on another channel up the dial. It's an incredible deke by Quinn Hughes at center ice to get past Pavel Buchnevich. I thought the game was done. I was, they're not going to get another opportunity here, but Hughes is able to keep them in possession of the puck. Petey on the blue line and the play he makes to make sure it's onside, and then an absolutely perfect pass to Boeser. And then an elite snipe from Boeser, Blake, on the type of goal you so very rarely see in the NHL these days. You and I grew up in an era where Guy Lafleur and Mike Bossy scored that goal often, right? Coming down the wing, the big loaded up blistering slap shot. These days, you don't typically get that much space. Goaltenders are really good. The equipment is sizable. You don't have a lot of holes, and you don't see goals from distance. But that one goes in, and like the entirety of British Columbia explodes, knowing that we're going to overtime and have a chance for a second point in the biggest regular season game in years.
I do worry about where they score goals from last night. Like, Canucks have not had a good PDO all season long. It feels like their PDO is reconciling a little bit here late in the season, and they're not scoring goals from in tight. Like, great that went in, but how many times are that goal and the Kiefer Sherwood goal, how many times are they going in? So in terms of things that you take out of this game, again, you don't apologize for being on a heater if you've got a goal scorer that's rolling like thunder, but is it repeatable? And ultimately, Hughes makes the great play to set it all up. He was a shadow of himself in overtime. When you play over 30 minutes, like, overtime is Quinn Hughes's time to play in the park. And that was a kid that had played all day in the sun and had no energy left to play in the park.
Yeah.
And that's how they get the extra point.
The swings of emotion in this game, too, I think is part of what made it compelling and a visceral experience, to be down early, and especially after that first period. And we talked about it yesterday, where it's going to be a playoff style game. Low scoring, opportunities are infrequent. Everybody playing to make sure they avoid the big mistake. You get the goal from Sherwood to tie. You're feeling better about yourself. You get the 2-1 goal from Boeser. You got a third period leads in the third period leads in playoff games. Got to close them out. Then they give up the 2 quick ones to St. Louis, and all seems lost, only to salvage the point with the Boeser buzzer beaters. So just the ebbs and flows, the highs and lows of the game last night. Compelling emotionally, even if it doesn't turn out the Canucks way.
And I'm at, if that one comes out of the loss column, like if you had suggested, hey, the Canucks should go 3-3 minimum on this road trip, if that one comes out of the loss column rather than the win column, then you're okay with it, right? Like if you go 3-2-1 now, that's fine.
That's fine.
But you just can't take it out of the win column. That's all.
Right. As for Elias Paterson, and boy, a lot of social media activity on him last night. I'll pull out what our old friend Grady Sass said. Just a reminder for those blasting Paterson. Highest game score on the night with a multi-point game, including the primary assist on the game-tying goal. Extends his point streak to 6 games. Now has 10 points, 4 goals, 6 assists over his last 7 games. Yeah, allowed mistake in overtime. He wasn't the only one culpable on that goal. Yeah, he might have been a little quiet for your liking in the first period when everybody on the Vancouver Canucks was quiet. But all in all, I'm not going to raise a ruckus about that game and put a target on Elias Paterson and say he's one of the reasons why the Vancouver Canucks lost. He was as much a contributor as he was a detractor last night for me, at least.
Yeah, what they needed was somebody else. Again, this is a thin, shallow team offensively right now. and they needed somebody else to rise to the occasion. A DeBrusk, a Suter, Hughes, Paterson, and Boeser. They left their imprint on the score sheet. No matter what you thought of their performance overall, they ultimately did their job at the end of the night. But they need somebody else.
I would push back on Hughes a little bit. That was not a good game for Quinn Hughes. Like, by his lofty standards, that wasn't close to a good game.
I hear you by his
Quinn
standards, but he ultimately makes the first assist on the game-tying goal, right?
Yeah,
so,
I mean, a virtuoso play to get them to overtime, absolutely. But was he on the ice for 3 goals last night, or was it 4? Yeah. So, and you're right. Like, it could be that he's just overtaxed. We saw this last year. He's a -2 on the night, playing more than 30 minutes. I mean, he does have 12 attempts on the goal, which is pretty darn good for a defenseman. We thought he would be aggressive last night in terms of shooting the puck and being the catalyst offensively, and he was trying to be all of those things.
And for whatever turnovers you might want to label as his, he played 2 people's ice times. Like, there's a lot of guys that average 15 minutes a game. He played 2 people's worth of ice time, so that he's allowed 2 people's worth of turnovers in a game.
11:30 of the third period, so he played significantly more than half the third period. Kiefer Sherwood scores. We had talked yesterday going into the game, Blake, how Kiefer Sherwood is the type of playoff-style player that Vancouver Canucks players lauded Patrick Allvin for signing on July 1st, saying we hated playing against this guy in the playoffs. If it was to be a playoff-style game, that was something that suited Kiefer Sherwood. He scores a goal, and with 10 hits has now tied the NHL record for hits in a season with 383. And, of course, he is going to get many more opportunities to put that record even further out of reach for whomever chooses to pursue. He's got 13 more games left to build on that total. Who knows how many hits he's going to wind up with, but I think it's a pretty good chance he's going to get over 400. 17 more to 400. I think that should be easy peasy in what's left of the schedule. Here's something, and we've been looking at this a little bit. That Hamalytics account has done a very nice job of tracking this game to game. But, Blake, the dump and chase or the chip and chase game, and it just doesn't seem to be working right now in terms of regaining possession. It doesn't seem like there are Vancouver Canucks with enough speed on the forecheck to get on that primary defenseman, or enough Vancouver Canucks making good secondary reads to see where the puck is going and try to regain possession after the defenseman goes and collects it in his own zone. If you're going to play the degree of dump and chase or chip or chase hockey that Rick Tocchet wants to play, you do have to come up with the puck a greater percentage of the time than the Vancouver Canucks have been coming up with the puck last night. 18 shots in the game. They're outshot by 11. It's 12-3 in the first period. Okay, there's 38 attempts blocked and missed. It's higher than normal. But where are you in terms of whether dump and chase is even working for them right now?
You don't have to rewatch both games, folks. If you've got 10 minutes of your life to devote to this, go to NHL.com. They do these condensed game packs. They're like 7 to 10 minute sort of condensed game. Go watch that for the Winnipeg game, and then go watch it for the Blues game. And you're going to notice something very different. The speed at which, when they do try to do a chip and chase, or even when they try to gain the zone with possession, the guy coming through the neutral zone in the Winnipeg game was coming through at minimum 8 out of 10 speed. The throttle was that high. Last night, you saw the guy entering your screen coming from the Canucks zone and moving so slowly. So,
I mean, he's miles away from the first defenseman. He's miles away from the second defenseman.
On the controlled entry, easy to defend when that guy's coming in at 5 out of 10 speed. And on a dump and chase, there's no chance he's getting to the puck.
Yeah, and it continued what has been a trend here for the – and look, this is going to be a trend for most teams, but again, the pronounced way the Vancouver Canucks want to play dump and chase, chip and chase hockey. And I also understand that there are going to be shifts where the dump or the chip is for the sake of a line change, And that is particularly the case when you're expending energy defending in your own zone or on your own side of center. But 30 controlled attempts last night, successful on 26. 37 uncontrolled attempts, just 5 successful. So, I mean, that's a paltry percentage of the time that you're getting the puck back after a dump and chase or a chip and chase. And that's got to get better. That's got to get better because minus Filip Chytil and minus the offensive abilities and acumen of the forwards that they're putting out there, and minus JT Miller, that is absolutely clear as well. If the Canucks have to play this way, then they have to do a better job of playing this way. Let's hear from Coach last night. Talking didn't like the first period, but was okay with the final 40. Here's Coach.
The second and third, we were better. I didn't think our first was that good. I shouldn't say it. I wasn't bad. I just think the first period, I don't know if we didn't have our legs. Maybe that Winnipeg took a little bit of us, but once we started getting our legs, we started to come a little bit.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily disagree. You say they needed somebody else to step up, like, Jake DeBrusk with 2 in his last 12 now. These are really important games. Jake DeBrusk, one of his calling cards in Boston was he scored big goals. He was there for them in the playoffs. We knew he was a streaky guy when he came here. He has done nothing to disprove that. They absolutely need more from Jake DeBrusk right now, given the paucity of offensive players they have in the lineup and given the fact that he's one of their better goal scorers. And I see J-Pat.
He had such a cushion for the goal scoring lead on this team.
Oh, I know.
And now
it's one goal.
Boeser's right there behind him. He needs
23 to 22, and Boeser with 20. He could pass DeBrusk by the end of this season too.
DeBrusk needs to look at what Boeser's doing and say, okay, I got to do that too. And that is moving the feet. It's just, it's so simple.
Yeah, they absolutely need him now. This is a time where they need one of these Jake DeBrusk hot streaks where he pots a bunch in succession.
He knows these Eastern arenas, Matt. I wonder if this is a good opportunity. Now that they're into the East here, Madison Square Garden, he's played a lot more games at MSG than anybody else in this team. I wonder if he can rise to the occasion here.
He has to. Yeah, you're right. A lot of familiar buildings here. Garden, Jersey, Island, all places where he would have played many times before. Not a whole lot of travel here, right? You just bunk down in the New York City metropolitan area. So need Jake DeBrusk. Boeser had been doing his part until last night and helping supplement what is a pretty weak offensive attack to begin with. Jake DeBrusk needs to step up here in a big, big way. J-Pat. And we'll get more into this with J-Pat later when he joins the program. But we are on the verge, if we're not there already, in terms of forecasting this Western Conference playoff chase and what it could ultimately come down to, including tiebreakers, Blake. J-Pat, who won the season series between the Canucks and Blues? The Blues went 2-1 in 3 head-to-head meetings, so it had to be them, right?
Done.
Hold on. St. Louis was 2-1 versus Vancouver, 4 points, but both wins were in overtime. Vancouver was 1-0-2, 4 points, but the win was in regulation. Regulation wins is the first tiebreaker. Jeff is right about regulation wins being the first tiebreaker, but regulation wins are not the first tiebreaker in the head-to-head, which is the 5th tiebreaker, and where, when you play an odd number of games, you throw out the first game in the city that hosts 2 games. We'll get into this more with Jeff later in the show. It is the sort of thing that can turn the brain into scrambled eggs. But yes, there are a number of tiebreakers that would come into play should Vancouver, St. Louis, or Vancouver and somebody else, or St. Louis and somebody else finish tied in points at the end of the regular season.
As Well, first of all, we should say next week we'll begin to put up the standings on a daily basis because we're at that point in the season. The thing also to remember, the Blues have played more games than the Canucks. So while the Blues did bump the Canucks down in the standings last night, Blues have played 70 games already. So the Canucks would have the game in hand now to tie or leapfrog them by the single point. So that is something to keep in mind there when you think, oh, the Canucks have been bumped out of a playoff position. They still have a better points percentage than the Blues by, what is that, a 10,000th, I believe?
I mean, obviously all game it's going to wash where everyone's going to play 82 when it's all said and done. So that is not a tiebreaker per se. That's just,
Yeah, we're just, people first go to the standings and they go, oh, they've been bumped out. Well, that's totally.
I mean, yes and no. So your tiebreakers are regulation wins, regulation and overtime wins, wins, period. And then you get into head-to-head before you get into goal differential. We will lay this out in further detail if it becomes required.
It should be noted too.
Final week.
When you go and look at the standings right now, the far right column is the streak of a given team. The Vancouver Canucks are the only team in the wild card race that is not coming off a win right now. So everybody has started to pick it up a little bit, and the Canucks have played okay recently. Like they're not floundering in the last 5, 6, 7 games, but everybody else is picking it up too. Like they have to bring it every single night because everybody else seems to be as well.
5-11 in overtime now, 7-12 beyond regulation. If it does come down to the Canucks missing the playoffs by a point or two, I think we're all going to be ruing overtime, how you could be 5-11 or whatever it winds up being in overtime when you have the cheat code that is Quinn Hughes or 7-12. Beyond regulation play.
And no one's suggesting that you flip that. Nobody's suggesting you flip that. And what if the Canucks were just 500 in overtime? Like, my goodness, what would the world look like for them? Where are they right now? And I think the answer is they would be with a 2 to 3 point cushion in the playoff race if they were merely a 500 team.
We would spend less time talking about how weak the St. Louis Blues schedule is and more time talking about if the Canucks just take care of business, they're going to be fine here.
Exactly.
That's the difference in narrative and discussion that we're having now because of the poor overtime record. What's up with our friends here?
A couple weeks back, International Women's Day, Neighborhood Brewing released the Glow Up Hazy IPA with hibiscus. It's a collaboration with the Pink Boot Society, bold, juicy, vibrant brew with notes of citrus, stone fruit, and tropical fruit. Sounds very yummy for the spring and summer season. This draft-only release is available at Neighborhood and select locations. If you see it, drink it.
Asked a poll question, Surrey Mitsubishi poll question last night in the immediate aftermath of the game, and you can go to the Harrison Price X and YouTube channels to cast your vote. 2 polls running right now through the weekend. Have you lost faith in the Canucks season? The vote is 52% no over the first 900 votes here, Blake. I was a little surprised in the immediate aftermath last night that I didn't see more doomsdayers. And perhaps that's a function of getting the 1 point for the overtime loss. But given, I didn't put it this way. I did not sense a ton of optimism in the market until the Winnipeg game, but even after the Winnipeg game. I felt as much apprehension and nervousness as I looked at people discussing the Vancouver Canucks on social media. I go back to that Boeser goal, and if you finish it off with 2 points in overtime and the high that this market would be on. But where do you think the market is? Where are you in terms of faith and confidence level that they could at the very least get to the Stanley Cup playoffs?
I think why you're right about the Jets win. I think everybody was of the same mind, or 90% of the fan base was the same mind. Great win. Follow it up. And without traction, without sustained traction, like I really think if the Canucks won 4 in a row, which is a modest win streak, Matt, like that, you do not write
but
home
a huge one for them this year, Blake. Right. That's the thing. Like
they have not suffered a lot of losses in a row. We've talked about that, and that has kept their season afloat. But they also haven't got on a terribly hot winning streak or undefeated streak. And theoretically, if they beat the Rangers tomorrow, Matt, that's 3 games without a regulation loss. Like that would be an accomplishment.
Honestly, though, Blake, I feel as that is a more maddening season than a season where you do have a conventional 6, 7, 8 game winning streak. You have a 5, 6, 7 losing streak. Like those are the sorts of seasons that make sense to me. When I watched the Vancouver Canucks this year, and Alvin has name checked this so many times, like I'm driving to the rink not knowing what to expect. Completely the case. I could see them absolutely fired up to play JT Miller tomorrow and run a wounded animal Rangers team out of the Garden. I could also see them absolutely spitting the bit, not being prepared in the first period. JT and the Rangers go off. Next thing you know, it's 3-0, and the Canucks go meekly into the New York City night.
Neither of those surprises me.
No, exactly.
No.
And in previous years, previous incarnations of this club, one side of that ledger would surprise me. And, in terms of the Winnipeg win, I think you're so right in terms of now follow it up. Show me something in terms of building off the win. I also think people looked at it and went, they got the exceedingly rare off night from Connor Hellebuck, and they took good advantage of it. Canucks, not the only team in the Western Conference or even the Pacific Division without some drama and adversity right now. Oh, what a night for the Edmonton Oilers, who lose in overtime to the Winnipeg Jets, so they secure a point. They are 2 ahead of L.A., for second place in the Pacific Division, albeit the Kings have 2 games in hand there. Edmonton 3 back of Vegas. Vegas with a game in hand there for the division lead. But Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl hurt. The report today, they're going to be out at least a week. And Stuart Skinner was pulled by the concussion spotter in this game, Blake. A phrase we don't utter very often in the National Hockey League. We've said it before to bring this back to the Canucks, as we always do. Edmonton has given you another gettable season here this year. Edmonton has given you a season whereby if you were on your P's and Q's, you might once again be hosting them in the Stanley Cup playoffs. They are your derby. I realize Vegas is good, LA is good, but Edmonton, year in, year out, because of the sheer star power they have on their team and the fact that most stars of that ilk in NHL history at some point break through and win a Stanley Cup, if not multiples. And Edmonton was close last year. The Oilers have given the Canucks and everybody else in the Pacific a gettable season here, and now with some injury concerns coming down the stretch. I can only imagine what we'd be talking about if the Canucks were able to follow up last year's great performance with something similar this season.
Well, back to that overtime record. Again, if you're 3 or 4 points better because of a better overtime record, and Edmonton is staring down the barrel of a 3 or 4 game losing streak because their 2 kingpins are gone. I mean, Edmonton would be gettable right now. Even with the short runway left on the season, you could say, hey, we get a little bit hot here. We can catch these guys. But they're 8 points back now. It's not going to happen. But
yeah, Coach Knobloch saying Skinner is fine. Day-to-day, maybe a week for both McDavid and Draisaitl. Their offseason or their deadline addition, Trent Frederick, also a couple of weeks away as well. So, Jeff Marek mentioned this several weeks back, and I wholeheartedly agree. I am, for the most part, Edmonton is going to be fine. They have a blip every season. It doesn't really shake my confidence in them because of how good their top two centers are. I wonder if this one is a little bit different, like limping to the finish line as the Oilers are, and looking like they're going to play the Kings again in the first round of the playoffs. And, at some point, give LA enough opportunities. I think one of these years they're going to get another miracle, just not on Manchester. Oh, my God, I read this yesterday, Blake, and I just wanted to scream. Great story from ESPN. Good reporting here from Emily Kaplan. American billionaire Dan Friedkin has emerged as a strong ownership option to bring the NHL to Houston. Dan Friedkin is already dipped his toe in sports ownership. Well, more than that, he owns AS Roma of Serie A in Italian soccer, and he owns Everton in the EPL. For years, the NHL had sort of had soft interest from Tillman Fertitta, who, of course, owns the huge restaurant group, also involved Fertittas of the UFC way back when. But it sounds like Friedkin has now emerged, and the NHL has talked about how, it's the franchise, it's the building, it's the practice. You got to have all your ducks in a row. So that comes out about Houston as a potential expansion site. We also learned this week the governor of the state of Louisiana acknowledged that he had a productive phone call with the National Hockey League. That would be for a team in New Orleans. Kevin Weeks, who was early on this file a couple of years back, continues to report that Atlanta has made progress, and the model in Atlanta would be more of a suburban rink, much like their baseball stadium is now, as opposed to downtown. Remember, Atlanta is a twice-failed NHL market. Mm-hmm. And Gary has even name-checked Omaha, Nebraska, Kansas City, where they have a building and no primary tenant, and Cincinnati, Ohio, as potential destinations or cities who have expressed interest in NHL teams.
So the distant number 4 in North American sports
is looking to go to 34, or Blake, as Kevin Weeks tweeted last, 36 franchises.
So we're going to be the biggest league, even though we haven't figured out how to do it well enough to get the TV deals and such that the other 3 leagues are getting.
And Blake, we're not going to go to cities where they love hockey.
Right.
We're going to go to cities where we have to sell them on why this is a great sport.
We're going to roll a bunch of dice.
Yeah.
It's a bold move.
I realize these governors now look at the expansion dollars available, and the rumored price tags for the new ones would be $1.5 billion, if you can believe that, Blake. Nearly 3 times what Vegas spent, more than 2 times what Seattle spent. I realize when you look at that from a revenue generation standpoint, where you can go to the cocktail parties, the rich, fancy cocktail parties, and brag about how much revenue you drove or how much revenue came in because of how brilliant you are as business people. I was a little concerned that we would water down and dilute the talent and create some ugly games, ugly teams, ugly seasons. To their credit, the NHL and the NHLPA are now at a point where there are it's a pretty deep player pool, but I would also wonder about, especially if you're adding 4 more teams. Like, Blake, if we're adding 4 more teams, and we're adding 24, 30 new defensemen to the league. Although, like, what's the second line center look like in a 36-team league? Is that a 35 to 40-point guy?
Yeah.
But again, the choices of places you're looking to go to, like Houston might be the most competitive sports marketplace in the country. One of them. You are behind the NFL team. You're certainly behind college football, and there's a multitude of college football teams, right? Because all the alumni bases in Houston for all the big Division I Texas schools. Heck, their college basketball team's the number 1 seed again here at March Madness. They got the NBA. They've got Major League Baseball. They spend their Friday nights at high school football stadiums in the fall. I look at all of those names and I think to myself, God, Quebec City would be so much better than any of these potential sites in terms of love and culture for hockey.
If you're going to do Texas at all again, a second one, why wouldn't you go to one of the smaller cities that will make you their own, like a San Antonio or Austin? Like, wouldn't that make more sense rather than trying to compete in the high finance cities where
market
you think, all the money's there.
Yeah.
But you got all the competition there too.
Market size and corporate headquarters, of course, are big things that they look at.
Yeah.
Also, you just have the raw population to be able to fuel a little bit more television. Not that it has worked in South Florida, not that it has worked with the second team in South Carolina,
Arizona,
in Southern California, or that it worked in Arizona, or that it has worked in Atlanta, which is also a big metropolitan.
Those are big cities.
Area.
Yeah,
those are really big. I mean, Atlanta is huge. Atlanta has tons of corporate headquarters and hasn't worked twice, and they're looking to go back. Anyways, I was disappointed to read all that. Like, hit pause, guys. Let Vegas and Seattle marinate a little bit, put some roots down. You're all very rich people. You don't need another check of 20, 30, 40, $50 million coming on in. I realize nobody says no to money, but understand what you're doing to the game, what you're doing to the product in the league going forward, as opposed to just saying those
expansion to them is Social Security. Like it's their way of getting a baseline free check.
Yeah.
Only there are ramifications to it.
Yeah, there are. And you did get away with it in terms of the talent pool going to Vegas and Seattle. Another quick expansion, I would, I'm just not sure the talent pool could uphold 4 more teams in quick succession. All right, let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by our friends at Greta. April 10th, everybody, circle the date, because that's when we will next be at Greta for a Canucks Army watch party. Game against Colorado. Looking forward to that. Until then, Greta, fantastic spot, pregame, postgame. Your steps from the stadium and arena. They've got fantastic drink specials on weekly. Check out the great street food menu. Of course, the arcade. 50 West Cordova, Greta Bar, the place to be. Let the games begin. Jeff Paterson's going to join us. We will look back to last night's game in St. Louis, point forward to tomorrow's game at the Garden. At 10 a.m. start, everybody, at the Garden against the Rangers and JT Miller. Jeff Marek will join, where he gives his 2 cents on what he saw last night and what he's seen over the last week with the Vancouver Canucks. And yeah, he pinpoints a missing Filip Chytil right now as a big reason why the Canucks are where they are in some of these games. Not to mention, we talk about an old Canuck, and is there a possibility that a former Canucks captain could be coming back this summer?
Leave it at that. Leave it at that.
That's all I'm going to say. Time now for our Bet365 Bets of the Day. This segment proudly brought to you by Bet365. I have been awful with my March Madness upset picks, Blake, so why don't you lead us off again here? I think he's led off the whole week. He's had the honor.
I missed it, though. Jonathan David was my goal scorer last night for Canada.
I missed 3 NCAA games, Blake, so you're better than me.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go correct score for the Whitecaps tomorrow. Again, at Bet365, you can toggle the score to whatever you want, customize the final score, and you get really good cheddar for it. I think the Whitecaps are capable of going 5-0, man. And I'm going to go with a 2-0 scoreline, which is bold because they're missing a lot of guys. So it's a big onus on Jaden Nelson and Brian White. On Jaden Nelson. Brian White is gone, so it's an even bigger onus on Jaden Nelson. But I think the depth is going to rise. 2-0 final for the Whitecaps pays out at plus 850.
I'm going on this Whitecaps game as well. We had Caps winger Jaden Nelson on the show on Monday. He was telling us how excited he is to be back in Canada as a Canadian, back in MLS, contributing to this awesome start with a new coach and a new system, where he talked about how everybody just has found the rhythm, fitting in, working together in unison. He's back on the pitch as of last week. He had a knock after that sensational start to the season. I imagine there's going to be a whole lot of energy in the Caps and in the building Saturday night against Chicago. So I'm going with Nelson to get the first goal of the game. Not as an anytime goal scorer, which I still like at plus 225, but I'm going a limb thinner. First goal of the game, Jaden Nelson of Vancouver Whitecaps FC, paying out at plus 650.
Daniel Rios is not a bad anytime goal scorer, too, because he's going to get the start up top, and this has never been a better time for Daniel Rios to score for the Whitecaps. So,
breaking against the Whitecaps. Breaking news coming in. Oh, for the Whitecaps.
Or the Whitecaps. The new striker for the Whitecaps, yeah.
Right. Breaking news coming in from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win is a barn burner, every face-off, hat trick, power play, shot on goal, penalty shot, every suspenseful minute in between. Amazing. Whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365, an official partner of the NHL. Download the Bet365 app and use code NATION to get in on the game. Code NATION. Must be 19 or older. Please play responsibly. J-Pat, coming up next. Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center.
And I mean, who knows? We'll have to ask Jeff Paterson. I see him as a G&T guy. We'll have to see if we can tempt him. Although he certainly may have, he may be up to here with the S&P portion of an S&P G&T. So we'll see if he could possibly stomach it. But the Resurrection Spirits gin in and of itself might be enough of a temptation. You have to go check it out. resurrectionspirits.ca. All of their spirits made with such care, their East Vancouver location. This gin, complex, deep flavors, local ingredients, and most of all, it's perfect for this spring and summer season. Use the code SNP, using the ampersand sign, SNP, to get $5 off your bottle. And once the SNP gin is gone, it is gone. Limited edition release here, resurrectionspirits.ca.
Jeff Paterson is the host of Rink-Wide Vancouver. They were busy last night. He's our Vancouver Canucks reporter as well. And thank you in advance. You're going to be sitting in for me on Monday. Jeff, how are you?
I'm good. And we've joked that we need all of Resurrection's product line on hand after a lot of these Canuck games. Yeah, I've had the odd G&T in my day. Grew up in a household where rye was poured as well, so no stranger to the odd rye and 7.
They've got a rye, too. Yeah.
Like the idea of a ready-to-go old-fashioned right out of the bottle. They got that in the product line, too. So, nice. Yes, we're not quite there yet where this has become a regular feature on the post-game show, but nights like last night, again, make you think that we should have the product on standby.
So how damaging do you think an overtime loss is going to be here, Jeff?
Well, I guess I look at it and think that they're now a point further from the playoffs than they were when they started the hockey game. And look, buzzer beaters are incredible, and that one was as well. And, on the first day of March Madness, the timing was pretty good too. So on that level, they got something. Something's better than nothing, but guess what? 2 is better than 1, right? This is hockey math at this time of the year. Mm-hmm. And so it's hard to get terribly excited about the idea of, they salvaged something and got a single point, but at the end of the year, you add them all up. Like last night's loss doesn't sink them. It just makes the challenge that much greater. So you put it on the pile and you move on to the next one. I've said that they have to go 3-3 or at least get 6 of 12 points on this road trip. That's not going to keep them above the playoff bar, and they're no longer above the playoff bar. But I think that will keep them in the race. The problem is that 5 of their final 9 games are against those top teams in the Western Conference, and so it's only going to get tougher from here. They were in that hockey game. Like, you guys help me out. Where did the track meet of the third period come from? Because for 40 minutes...
Oh, yeah.
For 40 minutes, and particularly the opening 20, I was a little disappointed. The big win over Winnipeg, I thought they would carry the vibes. They knew the importance. And 2 shots in the first minute and 1 over the final 19 of that opening period. And I guess I fear that if they do sneak into the playoffs, that's what playoff hockey is going to look like from the Canucks, where they're just going to try to defend and win 1-0. And then when the other team opens the scoring, that game plan goes out the window. So credit to them. They didn't go quietly in St. Louis, but 60 minutes or 63 minutes, again, at this stage of the season, just left you wanting more.
A few minutes in, the shots were 6-2 St. Louis, and I'm sitting there going, wow, this could be a whole lot of fun. I started feeling dumb about asking Blake a park the bus question yesterday when we discussed this game. Jeff, one of the things, and we've been tracking it through one of the accounts that looks at this night after night, but they dump the puck in. They don't have anyone on the forecheck. Like their chances of recovery, like you look at the low shot totals, is because they are not actually securing possession of that puck when they're dumping and chasing or chipping and chasing. And of course, minus Filip Chytil, he's really shown, his absence has really shown up in terms of controlled zone entries and getting into the offensive zone.
Well, Matt,
speed.
Let me interrupt you because I was watching the ESPN broadcast of this, and they do the on-bench interviews. And so they have Rick Tocchet about 12 minutes into the game on the bench, and they asked him about that, about why he can't get the puck. And he said, the defensemen are so good at moving the puck quickly that we can't get to the puck in time. And so he said it was the St. Louis defense that prevented that. But Jeff, I think they could be accused of just not even getting on their horse to make that even possible. Right.
So we can say they play dump and chase, but really they play dump and try to chase.
Yes.
And look, Jordan Binnington's sort of an underrated puck handler, and I think that was another layer in that they dump the puck in. Binnington goes out every time, stops it, and either moves it or sets it up for the defenseman then to break it out easily. And so, that part was frustrating too. Again, I just thought that they proved something to themselves against Winnipeg that they would apply the very next game out. And instead, that looked a lot like the Utah game where they struggled with Utah's breakout and speed through the neutral zone. Jordan Kyrou, I thought, was flying all night long. And the Blues have some other guys that get around the ice. And quite frankly, guys, at this stage of the season, I thought the Canucks had about 4 players that really were invested in that hockey game. And otherwise, a bunch of guys spinning their wheels. And then at the lower end of the lineup, you've got guys that it's probably just not fair to expect an awful lot more from. Guys that have spent the majority of the season down in Abbotsford, that you're just not thinking that they're going to come through and generate an awful lot in the way of offense for you. So Boeser and Paterson, to a lesser degree, Nils Höglander, Kiefer Sherwood, I thought they all stepped up and performed for the Vancouver Canucks. But I thought it was a dreadful night for Pius Suter, who's been really good for them all season long. Gets absolutely schooled on that face-off that leads to the Tyler Tucker goal. Suter went 2-13 in the face-off circle. Like, come on, at this stage of the season, and he's been bumped up to the 2C role. Like, that just, you got to find a way to dig in and saw off a few of those draws at the very least. Jake DeBrusk, I know a lot made about his line change in overtime. And not sure what went into the thinking there, but on that same goal off the faceoff, he gets out to the point, like he's got to block that shot. Instead, it deflects off him and a funny angle that finds its way in. So I didn't think there was a whole lot going on with Jake DeBrusk's night. Connor Garland, Dakota Joshua, on it goes. And quite frankly, guys, it was a rough night for Quinn Hughes. Let's be honest here. He's on the ice for 3 of the 4 goals, including the game winner in overtime. No idea what he was thinking when he deflected that first goal. Just no need to touch that puck. Now, I want to be very clear here that this isn't a criticism of Quinn Hughes. This is a criticism of the organization asking this guy to play 11 and a half minutes of the third period, 2.5 minutes of overtime, 30-plus minutes in a hockey game like this. That was his 4th game in 6 nights with a back-to-back and cross-continent travel. And I get it. Their game plan when they start every game is that Quinn Hughes is going to be the best player on the ice. He's going to tilt the ice in their favor. He's going to do incredible things, and the rest will flow from there. But at some point, you get diminishing returns. When you run this guy out night after night after night after night, in the last 5 games, since he returned from the lineup for the game in Calgary, he's averaging 27 minutes and 45 seconds in a league of 700 players. There is only one guy that's within a minute of that amount of ice time, and that's Zach Werenski in Columbus, who's having an incredible season, and they lean on him a lot. But that just shows you the extreme workload right now for Quinn Hughes. And so, you ask, look at their overtime record again. It's been a disaster, and it's a huge part of their season. Quinn Hughes should be the ultimate difference maker in overtime. But again, you're not getting the best of Quinn Hughes by the time 60 minutes is up, and he just doesn't have anything left in the tank. I think it's so apparent now. So you're asking him to do superhuman things at this stage of the season, and I think it just caught up to. He looked gassed last night, and when he's on the ice for 3 of the 4 goals the other team scores, you know that that's not a normal night at the office for Quinn Hughes.
What do you make of some of these role players that, come playoff time, the Canucks thought that Dakota Joshua's got the get out of jail free card. I get it. But man, like a heavy player, that would, real Dakota Joshua would have come in handy last night, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. And it is this sort of delicate dance that the fact that he's playing in the NHL after being diagnosed with cancer is an amazing story in and of itself. But he's in the lineup every night, and he's got 1 goal in his last 15 games at a time right now where every goal matters, every play matters. And yeah, there's just way too many nights where, unfortunately, it's been difficult for him to have any kind of impact on the hockey game. Connor Garland missed the game, so the fact he was back, that's good. And it bodes well for the rest of the road trip, but probably not 100% there. And those 2 guys had Nils Aman as their center. So again, that's a big ask right then and there. Teddy Bluger, you're not going to expect an awful lot in the way of offense. Drew O'Connor scored a nice goal against Winnipeg, but guys, that was his first goal, O'Connor. His first goal in the run of play as a Vancouver Canuck. He scored an empty netter, and he scored a penalty shot goal. And that was the first time that he had scored, while a game was really unfolding and still up in the air. And so I don't think you look at Drew O'Connor as a guy that you're going to lean on to generate a ton of offense either. Unfortunately, these are their candidates. These are their guys. And I know we can talk about, hey, should Lekkerimäki have been in the lineup? Yeah, maybe. But in a 1-goal game in the third period, how much ice time ultimately was he going to get? Linus Karlsson didn't play much down the stretch. And so this comes back to the tried and true and the guys that you're supposed to be able to trust. And look, they got 3 on the road. Like, that should get you something. And ultimately it did. It yielded a single point. But overtime again, frustrating for the Vancouver Canucks. And they end up shooting themselves in the foot with the bobble of the puck, the poor line change, and then giving up a 2-on-1. And as we said with Quinn, the old adage in hockey, right? If you're the defender on the 2-on-1, take away the pass, give the goalie the shooter, and Quinn just commits to Braden Shen, who makes the easy pass over to Broberg, and night is over at that point. So again, is it the mental fatigue on Quinn Hughes? Because that just didn't seem like the kind of decision that he would generally make in that situation.
Tyler Myers getting sucked over as well.
Yeah,
Tyler Myers, just when we were praising Tyler Myers, that was a rough one for Tyler Myers. Let's get to Elias. He giveth, he taketh away. He helpeth.
He giveth back again.
What did you make of number 40 last night, Jeff?
Yeah, and on Rink Wide and the chat, he was right at the center of it all again, and the knives were out. And I thought, of all the nights, like, go back to January and February, people were screaming for this guy to have multi-point performances, and he did yet again. And yeah, it's a heck of a pass to Brock Boeser into space there to recognize that was the play, and time's winding down. So 2 more assists. He's in on 2 of the 3 goals. Yeah, I mean, does he fumble the puck in overtime? Yes. When you look at the overtime foibles of the Vancouver Canucks, Elias Pettersson hasn't scored an overtime winner for them all season long. He has scored overtime winners in his career, but when you're looking at reasons why overtime hasn't gone their way, he is one of their difference makers, and he hasn't been able to make a difference. But I just thought a little misguided to really lay the loss at his feet last night. I laid my case out there. I thought there were other guys that didn't pull their weight, and so that top line, again, the game in Calgary last week, he scores in the third period to get that game to overtime. Here, he's part of the line in the third period that comes through. We're talking about all these moments of late. So yes, a miscue in overtime. It leads to the winning goal, but overall, I thought individually, look, we talked about Pia Suter's struggle in the faceoff circle. Guys, the Canucks won 17 draws on the night, and Elias Pettersson had 9 of them. Nobody else had more than 2 on this hockey club. So what are we doing in the faceoff circle? At some point, like, all of these, every moment matters in the playoff chase. Like, could you not find room for Raty at the very least?
Well, and Jeff, I was going to ask you.
He's not a difference maker, but again, if it's at the margins here, like, you've got a guy that can be better than the guys that are in the lineup right now. Like,
1-goal game, you are at the margins. Absolutely, you're at the margin. Every margin matters right now.
AHL players,
100%.
AHL players can't be your savior. Like, let's make no mistake about it. We can't be touting these guys in Abbey as sort of the answer to the Canucks playoff woes, but you're right. All you've got as options to incrementally improve your lot in life is what you've got in your stable. Lekkerimäki's got a game-changing shot. Aturatu's got a skill at winning faceoffs. Like, those are individual skills that the other guys in the lineup right now, all due respect to Linus Karlsson and Nils Zaman, do not have. They have no exceptional skills. Ratu and Lekkerimäki do. Are you not better off with those two guys?
Yeah, and so I've, for a little while here, wondered, especially since Filip Chytil went down. Chytil obviously brings speed, and that's a different element that, again, I thought against Utah and against St. Louis last night, noticeable that the Canucks were the second quickest team out there on the ice. So Chytil's not even on the road trip. That's unfortunate for him. Not going to get a chance to play against his former team back at Madison Square. And it's unfortunate for the Vancouver Canucks, obviously. So you're right. Like, how do you go about building the best possible lineup? And I get that you only get 4 recalls after the trade deadline. I think they've used 3 of them now, but there is still one there. Like, you don't want to leave that in your back pocket. So why wouldn't you bring Ratu in? And again, if it's a matter of 10 minutes, if in his 10 minutes, he can go 50% of the faceoff circle where some of these other guys are scuffling mightily, what might a faceoff win mean here or there to the Vancouver Canucks? Last night, a faceoff win for the Blues wound up in the back of the Canucks net.
Plus, he has a little bit more offensive acumen than Oman, so maybe he helps you there as well. If they miss the playoffs by a point or two, are we going to rue overtime, Jeff, or are we going to look back at an individual game and say it was that one? Or are we going to just look at some of the individual struggles of some of the players? Like, I find myself in this mindset now, reflecting back on the season and going, why are they in this spot? And if it doesn't come to pass, the Stanley Cup playoffs, that is, where are we going to pin the tail? What says you?
Wow, the overtime, I mean, they've left 12 points on the table. And I'm not going to be silly to say, hey, if it was completely reversed, if they had 3 overtime wins instead of losses, that would be 3 more points, and that would put them back above the playoff bar. As far as individual games go, Matt, I have to go back to the game out of the Christmas break against Seattle with a 4-1 lead and 5 minutes to play. Come on. Yeah. The Kraken can ultimately be around for 100 years at some point, and they'll probably look at that one and think one of the most improbable victories in franchise history. So they absolutely flushed. Now, they got a single point out of that, but there was a point that absolutely got away from them. There have been a few others. The 2-0 lead in Utah in the third period and lost that game in overtime. They've lost both games to St. Louis in overtime. I mean, how critical are those points? They lost to Utah in overtime. They lost to the Calgary Flames in overtime on the first night of the regular season. Now they got one back against the Flames in a shootout, so I guess that part's a push. But they didn't beat any of St. Louis, Calgary, or Utah straight up in the season series. Like, they didn't outright win a season series against any of those teams. And that's the surest way to make up ground in the National Hockey League, is to win these games, do it in regulation so that you get all the points and the other guys are left wanting. But, there's going to be so many reasons. Obviously, at the top of the list as they go into New York is all of the drama around this hockey club. And certainly there were some injuries that played into it as well. But, just missed opportunities. It's really been a season of missed opportunities. And so another one fell by the wayside last night when they did well to tie it, and it was sitting there for the bonus point, and unfortunately they let it get away.
And let's just clarify this, because Jeff, with a prescient tweet yesterday about the head-to-head with St. Louis, the Canucks have a regulation win against the Blues this year. The Blues do not have a regulation win against the Vancouver Canucks. Your tiebreakers are as follows: greater number of games won, excluding overtime and shootout. So regulation
R-dubs. Yep.
Victory, R-dubs. Greater number of games won excluded by the shootout. So regulation and overtime wins is your next tiebreaker. Greater number of games won in any manner. So total victories, the column that's most usually on the left. And then here was what Jeff was getting at yesterday. This is the 5th tiebreaker, everybody. The greater number of points earned in games against each other among 2 or more tied clubs. They have the same number of points earned against each other, St. Louis and Vancouver. So then you go into the subset of tiebreakers within that tiebreaker. And for the purposes of determining standing for 2 or more clubs that have not played an even number of games with one, that's not it. When more than 2 clubs are tied, the percentage of available points earned in games among each other shall be used to determine the standings. So I think you have it, Jeff, but we are deep into the tie-breaking procedure if it gets to that place.
And I think this is the important part here, that it would take a lot to get to the head-to-head record, that essentially you start the tiebreakers with their 82-game records and go from there. And if everything else was equal, then you would get to head-to-head. So I don't think it's going to matter, but it's also interesting to note that head-to-head against the Calgary Flames, the Canucks and the Flames both finished the season with records of 2-1-1 against each other. So their records are identical too. That's how tight it is. I mean, essentially, it really is going to come down probably to the final weekend of the regular season. And of course, the Flames had that one game in Los Angeles postponed and then tacked on. So the Canucks are done. Calgary is going to be the last team in this little chase here to play a game. Utah's in St. Louis on the final night of their regular season. So the drama likely to unfold. It's just a question of, can the Canucks hang in this race and be part of the mix right down to the wire?
Just one more thing. In 3-game sets, if you get deep into that tiebreaker, you throw out the first game in the city that hosts 2 of the 3. I kid you not. It's right here. I'm reading it.
I've seen that.
And Blake, I'm sorry, but your favorite stat, goal differential, it is merely the 6th tiebreaker, sir, after the head-to-heads and all the subset.
That doesn't bode well, because the first game against St. Louis, the first game in St. Louis was the Canucks regulation win. You're throwing that one out the window.
So that is the one that throws out if we get down to the subset tiebreaker of the 5th tiebreaker.
Real quick.
Real
quick. We got to ask you, does anything happen in this Canucks-Rangers game? And ultimately the poll question as well, overall, are the Canucks better off without JT Miller?
I'm not expecting much matinee hockey in Manhattan. The Rangers are reeling. They've got 2 wins in 9 right now. They've fallen below the playoff bar. They've fallen behind the Islanders. In fact, after Bo came through as the Canucks were losing in overtime, there was Bo Horvat scoring a big OT winner for the Islanders. Canucks will see Bo and the Islanders on Wednesday. But look, JT Miller's in a slump himself now. Got off to this terrific start, but I think he's gone 9 without a goal and 3 without a point. They lost to the Leafs last night. They've lost 3 straight at home in this stretch. So the stakes are high for both teams. I think it'll probably look and feel that way. Interesting to note, too, guys, that I assume it's going to be Kevin Lankinen again. That'll be his 9th start in the last 10 games for the Vancouver Canucks. Meanwhile, Igor Shesterkin, if he plays, he's played 13 of the last 15 for the Rangers. So these teams just leaning on their number one guys and not necessarily squeezing the results out of them. So maybe the Rangers go to Jonathan Quick for an afternoon game. Who knows? We'll see about that. But so I'm not expecting fireworks. I mean, we all know the storyline here, but nothing happened at Four Nations, and I don't think anything is going to happen here between JT Miller. In fact, I think Miller, if my understanding is, going out for dinner with a bunch of his former teammates tonight in New York. EP40 probably not on that list, but some others. So a little get-together, reunion tonight, and then get after it. As for the poll question, look, especially with Filip Chytil out of the lineup right now, it's hard to say that the Vancouver Canucks are a better hockey club without JT Miller. They're playing all these games that look and feel like playoffs. So this is a guy that rose to the occasion in the postseason last year. But this is such a multi-layered question, and I understand the timing of it, and hopefully we all turn a page after this game on Saturday. But and I saw JT quoted in the New York media today saying, like, he needed a fresh start. It was time to go, and I guess I kind of feel that same way. So, the air has been cleared here. I'm not sure either team's going to make it to the playoffs now. We'll see how it all plays out. So that would be a disappointment, I think, on both sides, obviously. But boy, they could use a JT Miller-like player right about now. Yeah, unfortunately for them, Miller's going to be on the other side tomorrow.
Jeff, I'm so very disappointed. Have we forgotten Game 8 in Boston and all the matinee hockey can be firework hockey, and I think he, as I said earlier in the show, I don't think JT's going to be able to help himself.
There's a moment. So, do you think there's a moment?
I think there's a moment because I think the pride runs deep. I think his pride is incredibly wounded that he's the odd guy out here and that he's heard everything that he's had to hear, much like some of the stuff we discussed here about his tenure in Vancouver. And, I think something happens. I think he takes a run or tries to lay a hit on Elias Paterson, and then I think we're into a team toughness question and moment for the Vancouver Canucks. We can't agree on that, right? Like if JT goes at Elias tomorrow, Jeff, Canucks have no choice but to Wolfpack, right?
Yeah, I would agree with that part. I mean, I think it's small W Wolfpack just because that's kind of been their response on a lot of nights.
But they are small
It's
W's.
Cubpack.
It's still a Wolfpack.
Cubpack.
Yeah, so no, I would agree with that. But look, I just don't think with the stakes what they are on both sides, like I can't imagine that JT Miller goes rogue to exact some sort of personal revenge, but a moment in the hockey game, somewhere along the line, sure. We've seen JT sort of go down that road in the past. So, yeah, I mean, look, there's a lot of intrigue, and understandably so. So let's see how things play out. And obviously, we'll be breaking it all down on Rink Wide on Saturday afternoon.
That'll be fantastic. We'll be watching. We'll be listening. Jeff, awesome stuff. You're in here for me on Monday. Appreciate that. And huge games now. Meaningful games in March and hopefully April.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center.
This segment brought to you by your Pacific Toyota dealers who have up to $6,500 now in rebates and fabulous financing on their brand new installment of the BZ4X. The 2025s are available. Take one for a test drive. This is a fully electric vehicle. So yes, your HOV dreams have come true, burning past all that traffic on your way to work and on the way back. And of course, you're also burning past all those gas stations for the rest of your life. How about that? The BZ4X from Toyota, 3.29% financing APR over 36 months. Go check it out. ShopToyota.ca.
Jeff Marek is the host of the Sheet weekdays at noon Pacific time here on the Nation Network, and he joins us typically on Fridays. How are you?
I am well. That was, how should I frame it? An exciting game, an exciting third, an exciting end of the third, an exciting last 4 seconds of the third. How do we want to frame this one here?
No, I wholeheartedly agree. Like, throw out the first period and the last 40 minutes in the overtime. Like, that's what playoff hockey is about. You know, the
Lankinen
thrills,
was
the
great
chills.
in the first, though. Like, if you're
that's fair.
I get it. Like, if you're a Vancouver Canucks fan, you're like, oosh, man, this one has an odor. But man, Lankinen was awesome. Well, how many goals should Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou have had in that first frame?
Let's ask you this as an objective observer, because obviously Canucks fans want the 2 points. The Canucks want the 2 points. But
yeah,
in the measurement of that's a big game, did the Canucks show up for that game, do you think?
They well, the goalie showed up in the first. Look, I think all of this is going to be linked to Quinn Hughes anyway. Like, if you're going to get, 3 periods and 30 minutes out of Quinn Hughes, you have a shot. I think that Vancouver showed up really in the third period on this one. The first two were Lankinen just trying to keep Vancouver's head above water here. But like, as Kelly Rudy would always tell me, like, you don't have to apologize for having a good goalie or having good goaltender or having a good goaltender. Like last time we all checked, the goalie is part of your team. So not the best 3-period team effort by Vancouver yesterday. But then again, like at the end of the game, you look at the sheet and you say to yourself, oh yeah, Elias Paterson had 2 points. So like, it wasn't obvious that, oh, look, Elias Paterson is back. I'm not ready to make that conclusion yet. I don't think any of us are. But as the games progress here, even just very quietly, there's EP40 with another couple of assists. And listen, Brock Boeser was outstanding yesterday. Quinn Hughes, I hate to shudder to think what he's going to look like if they keep playing him this much for the remainder of the season. But good on Quinn Hughes and a couple of very un-Quinn Hughes gaffes and turnovers in that game. But nonetheless, they're going to live and die on this guy. Like, just as a neutral observer on this one, it was, even though the outcome wasn't what Vancouver wanted, but they did salvage the point on a very dramatic goal by Brock Boeser. It was a very entertaining hockey game. And look, like, take solace in this. No one's touching St. Louis right now. They have hit a stride right now, like few other team. Well, no other team right now post 4 Nations in the NHL. Like that is the toughest out right now, maybe this side of the Carolina Hurricanes in the NHL.
So We do anticipate Demko at some point. We're less sure about Filip Chytil. How would you handicap their chances here down the stretch after
They need
that
a second line center. They and it was painfully obvious yesterday. Like they need this team needs a second line center. Like they're not surviving with their head above water here without Filip Chytil. That they, as much as I keep saying, oh, this is live or die, ride or die with Quinn Hughes, this is going to be the whole thing. They do need a second line center, and you wonder how much of a difference that would have made in a game last night, after Vancouver decided to wake up and make it a game, and catch up to Kevin Lankinen's play. A second line, a legit second line center would have really helped. So yeah, it's like, listen, the margin for error is so thin right now for Vancouver. Like it is. And you look at how many teams are fighting for that final playoff spot. And, Utah's got the Buffalo Sabres putting the puck in their own net, which is its own story on its own, but like they're right in that mix. St. Louis is hot. We know what Dustin Wolf is doing here with Calgary. It's going to be an exciting ride to the finish. We'll see where Vancouver ends up in this entire mix, but they cannot afford injuries. They cannot afford key players, key positions out for a long time. And that was pretty obvious in a game last night where, one specific player can mean all the difference.
Let me throw something at you then, because we have talked for several weeks here now about a second line center. How are you going to go about getting one? We've gone over the free agent list. We've thought about trades. Blake has even broken out some, unlikely but worthwhile explorations on offer sheets this summer. I'm scrolling X last night. I see a Canucks fan at EP40 All-Star. With Norris and Cousins off the market, I cannot think of a team willing to sell a center iceman besides the New York Islanders. If they're heading to a rebuild, is Bo Horvat going to be available this summer, Jeff?
I'm not gonna lie to you and say that I haven't thought about it as well. Right? Like, I know it didn't exactly end well between this management group and that player at all, and how they I don't want to relitigate the whole thing, but how they prioritize the signings. We've all been through it. But I'd be lying to you if I didn't say I've wondered about it. Now, having said that, let me play Killjoy and said I haven't heard it. Like it's one of those things that it's a good sports talk radio topic as we're firing around. Okay, try to marry a player to a position. I haven't heard it. It wouldn't be like the Islanders though to go full scale tear down rebuild. And even if you are rebuilding, like, isn't Bo Horvat the kind of guy that you want around younger players? Yeah. It's not as if like here's a guy that's going to be, awful for a rebuilding team. And, I think if anything, if you're going to rebuild, that's one of those veteran guys that you want around, unless they're going to go this rebuild and Bo Horvat says, I don't want any part of that, which again, I have not heard. This is all just like you guys like speculating. I wonder if
we're just turning over,
could shake free.
We're turning over rocks here and wondering where you get your second line center. Just explain this to me. Lou wants a world where his son Chris takes over, and yet there was reporting, David Pagnotta, if I'm not mistaken, talking about like scouts having screaming matches in the pre-deadline meetings with the Lamoriellos about the direction or lack thereof, and wanting to re-sign a bunch of guys who obviously haven't proven good enough. Like, where is that franchise headed, best you can tell?
I think the first decision is what's happening with Lou. And this is, as you can imagine, and this is right from up top, this would be ownership. Is Lou coming back in this capacity? Given Lou's history, position in the game, status, respect, all of it, this just can't be a press release. This is what's happening with Lou. Like, this needs to be handled. Again, if they're not going to bring him back to run this team, this one has to be handled so sensitively. I wonder if, and again, I'm not reporting this. We've all heard the whispers, all heard, what's happening with the Islanders this offseason, who's going to be making the decisions. If they are going to make a decision on Lou Lamoriello, I would imagine it would be framed or couched as a type of promotion for Lamoriello. This would have to be like the softest of possible landings. I don't think it's any secret that, Lou Lamoriello, wherever he goes, would like to clear a spot for Chris somewhere. I don't know if that's the direction they do go in, but it would make some sense to me and that's a major A, if they're going to do it, and B, if he would still be able to wield some type of influence on who his successor is. I would imagine that would make sense to me and a lot of other people.
Two questions.
A whole lot has to happen between now and then.
Two questions from the same sort of topic here with regards to Brock Boeser after back-to-back 2-goal games here for the player. A, can he score his way back into the hearts of this management group? I think he can score his way back into the hearts of the fans. But what about this management group? And what is the greater danger, do you think? Falling in love with your own player and re-signing them when you probably should move on, or trading away a player that you know all the warts on him to acquire a player that you think you know something about, but you really don't? What's the bigger danger?
It's a great question. I always default to the smartest thing is keep the player you know. Keep the player you know, because there's already a relationship, and we all know how relationships are, like melodies and the symphony. They rise and they fall and they rise, like any type of relationship, right? I always think back to me, the greatest sports quote of all time came from, just bluntly, like one of the most deplorable people in the history of sports, and that is Don King. And there's one thing that he said that's always stuck with me and has always rung true. This one moment of truth from like the ultimate BSer in the history of sports. And it goes like this: where there's money, there's understanding. And that's all that it really comes down to, right? Like, can Brock Boeser score his way back into the hearts? I would think so. Certainly the fans. And why not? Goals are expensive and goals are hard to come by. And the player, you have a relationship with the player, you know where the warts are, like everything about this play. Like no other team is closer to Brock Boeser, obviously, than the Vancouver Canucks. So if I'm the Vancouver Canucks, I default to trying to make it work with the player I know, then go to mystery box number 3, based on we think this is what it is like.
We talked about the ability for him to get to 27 goals maybe by the end of the season. Like what's a total that you'll look at the back of his hockey card and go, I mean, it was a small dip, but it's still a really good year for Brock Boeser. Is that a good season for Brock Boeser, 27 goals?
Not for the Brock Boeser that you want based on the money and the term that you're looking at. I think there are a lot of mitigating factors when you look at Brock Boeser and the season that he's had and the season that Vancouver has had. Again, I think that in there is a player that can score more than 27 goals a year. I think like you're like, let me throw it back to you. What is your baseline for Brock Boeser? Like obviously, like
27 goals.
He didn't. What's that?
For me, it's 27 goals. Like he
27 goals.
He's only cracked 30.
35 goal guy?
No, he only cracked 30 once. It was the 40 goal year. 27 goals is a goal every 3 games. I think he's that level of player. And of course, that's if the release, the finishing, and the foot speed can keep enough pace over the duration of this next contract to allow him to be in those scoring areas and finish those goals.
It'll be one of those moments where, it's interesting. Eric Tulsky has talked about this, GM of the Carolina Hurricanes. He's talked about this, and he said this last summer when a lot of players left. Jake Gensel left, Brett Pesce left, Tara Vinen left, like the mass exodus of players last year. Brady Shea goes to Nashville, like a lot of players left. And he said this on an analytics podcast called Expected by Whom. And I thought it was a really interesting point. He said, as a manager, what we fail to do sometimes, I'm paraphrasing, what we fail to do sometimes is have honest conversations with ourselves about, are we actively trying to make our team better, or are we just filling a spot? He said, like, it would be easy just to re-sign some guys. And here I am talking about both sides of my mouth here, because this player. If you're the management group and you look at the landscape and you say the best option that we have a shot at right now is Brock Boeser, then you're still trying to improve your team. Or do you look at it and say, we have a shot at someone else. We believe in ourselves as a management group. Losing Brock Boeser, we look at as a challenge to improve that spot in the lineup, and we believe in ourselves and our market and our ability to do so, then you go and do it. Otherwise, you're just filling a spot.
Yeah, and we've had these conversations. No, we have these. We've had these conversations before, which is why, like the Gillis era here, they were really disciplined about the players they wanted. Like if they missed out on a player, it wasn't like they had fallback B, C, and D, and they were going to get one of those guys. It was like, no, this guy, and maybe there was another one, and if not, they were going to find a different way to deploy that cap space and build their team.
And Nick Ehlers improves this team. Brock Boeser, holds this team. Like that's the difference, right? You can't. There are bigger fish to fry there.
Except for Boeser has outscored Ehlers in the last couple of years, and so you ask yourself,
the Ehlers conversation's fast. Sorry, go ahead, Matty. I apologize.
Well, I'm just saying, like we saw we had a tweet earlier in the show from Noah Strang of the Daily Hive. Ehlers has 47 goals over the last 2 years. Boeser's in the 60s. So Ehlers has better foot speed. Ehlers has been a longer, consistent 20-goal guy.
Yeah.
But Ehlers doesn't have nearly the heights of Brock. I mean, his best season is 29.
Can we pause on Ehlers for 1 second?
Please.
There's one thing that I used to talk about this with Anthony Duclair in Florida. When you have foot speed like that and skill like that, even though you're not going to score 30 goals and say like, look, he's an improvement on Brock Boeser. I've always felt that the value of someone like Nick Ehlers is he creates space around the blue line on entries like few others in the NHL. Like right away when Ehlers has the puck, everybody backs off. Like the Jonathan Huberdeau year where, he dined at, was at 115 points. I mean, he was playing with Anthony Duclair, and Anthony Duclair would make all the zone entries, and he would push the defense back, and all of a sudden, Jonathan Huberdeau, who's one of the most sublime playmakers, I know it might sound weird for some people, but you look at him in Calgary, like when he has ice, he's incredible. And Duclair would push all the blue line back and open up all this ice for Jonathan Huberdeau. That's why I look at Ehlers and I say, okay, sure, are the goals going to match? No, they're not. But I've always found the value of Ehlers is he opens up ice for everybody else because everybody backs off.
Fair, and so fast. And the one thing we know quite clearly here is that Boeser does not drive play, relies on others, and doesn't necessarily make others better. Yeah. Where I think you can make the argument. Well, you just made it on Nikolai Ehlers. Are you expecting any shenanigans tomorrow when the Canucks hit the Garden for their grudge match with JT Miller? I mean, Madison Square Garden, I love it.
I get it.
Home of WrestleMania.
I know. It's the biggest stage. You think of great WrestleMania moments, and you think of prize fights, and you think. I think that considering the New York Rangers are in an absolute dogfight to try to get into the playoffs, just like the Vancouver Canucks are in a dogfight. And listen, this has not been a good week for the Rangers. I'm not sure if you saw the game against Calgary. They looked awful. They looked a little bit better against the Toronto Maple Leafs last night, but this has not been a really good week at all for the New York Rangers. This has been one of those, torches at the castle gate, peasants and pitchforks kind of week for the New York Rangers. I think the last thing, if you're JT Miller, I think the last thing you want to do is make this about yourself and try to run around and even up scores or do whatever is going to make you feel good for about, for 5 seconds until you take that skate to the penalty box. I know it's a fun one to hype up. I get it. Trust me. I jump on that bandwagon all the time. I'm the one throwing logs on the fire. I'm that guy. I just, considering where New York is and considering where the Vancouver Canucks are, I can't see anything. Having said that,
all that makes sense.
I know the game's gonna take 3.5 hours.
Miller. Decision making is not his strong suit in terms of behavior. We've seen this before.
Well,
I'm just trying
I love
to,
it.
we've talked about like your head thinks one thing and your heart feels another. I'm just thinking like my head here, but then I'm like, hang on a second. Blake's got a point about the heart, and sometimes in sports the heart leads and it's not the head. So fair. I'll default to you on this one. Maybe I'm giving too much credit where it doesn't belong.
Well, even in the last week though, like it's been hilarious because like JT did an interview where he talked about reining in his emotions and all of those things. And then he does a subsequent interview where he says, nothing feels better than when you string a bunch of wins together as a team and you're leaving your balls on the line and playing hard and cussing yourself out and having an FU match with a teammate. Like it happens. It's part of hockey.
Yeah.
And then goes on to talk about how it's a lost art to give an F. And I'm sitting there going like, JT, you're not the only guy who gives an F.
The problem is the Rangers haven't strung those wins together that he's talking about.
Yeah.
Quite the opposite. They've looked flat all week long. And again, like, not to keep harping on one player, I always wondered, like, the Four Nations was going to be a springboard for some players, and it was like Jacob Slavin, Dylan Larkin, like it was a springboard for a lot of guys, and you wondered who it did damage to. I don't know that there was anybody. Again, we're still seeing it. Who's played worse coming out of Four Nations than Adam Fox?
Let me ask you the poll question.
Same. Yeah.
Are overall the Canucks better off without JT Miller?
Given everything that was surrounding this organized, like from a skill point of view on the ice, no, because very few players bring what JT Miller brought. But given everything that was happening and the cloud that was over this team, and the distraction and the conversation, like that needed to end. So for that, on the ice, they're not better off. Off the ice and as a whole, long term, they are better off. How's that for sitting on the fence?
No, I think we got you down as a yes.
No, but I answer the question the same way, similarly. Okay. I'd like to throw something at you at the end.
Okay.
There was a terrific story this week from Paul Paduti at Adjusted Hockey, and Paul does a great job of looking at the history of the game and casting forward. Yes. And so in the vein of Alex Ovechkin and the goal record,
Oh, yeah.
he looked at a bunch of players. Did you see it? Did you see the story this week? Okay.
It's great.
So looked at a bunch of players and projected forward what their careers are going to look like when it's all said and done. And on that list were 4 defensemen that he projects to crack 1,000 points for their career. Erik Karlsson, Victor Hedman, Cale Makar, and Quinn Hughes. Joining how many defensemen, Jeff, who have had 1,000 points in their career?
Is it 4?
Okay, give me the names.
Did he have 4?
No.
There would be Nick Lidstrom.
Mm-hmm.
Would have 1,000 points. Dennis Potvin would have 1,000 points. Brian Leach.
Correct.
Edmonton Oilers guy.
Oh, Paul Coffey. Oh, going away. How could I miss Paul Coffey?
You're halfway there.
Boston Bruins guy.
4 more.
Oh, there's 8 altogether?
There's 8, believe it or
Ray
not.
Bourque. Ray Bourque.
Yes.
Ray Bourque, of course. Larry Murphy.
Yeah.
Very good. I was wondering if you'd get Larry Murphy sometimes.
Larry Murphy, so I'm 2 away for 1,000.
Blake, you can help him out here.
Rob Blake?
Nope. Blake, one of them.
Chris Pronger?
No.
Scott Niedermayer?
No. Blake, one of them you should get.
Phil Housley?
Very good.
Oh, right. Yeah. Who's the other one?
Al McInnes. Who's actually third. It's Bourque, Coffey, McInnes, Housley, Murphy, Lidstrom, Potvin, Leach, your 1,000-point defenseman. Exclusive club.
Which
awesome that we're watching 4 of them right now, right?
Which is the one?
They stay healthy.
Which is the one out of all of those, when you consider how great they were, that we don't talk about enough?
Probably legacy-wise, Al McKinnon. Well, Larry Murphy's the obvious guy. He's sort of the ugly duckling of that group.
Yeah.
But in terms of Larry Murphy's the defensive version of Mike Gartner. Just longevity sort of gives him the big gaudy statistics. But in terms of like just legacy, we probably don't talk about Al MacInnis enough. Like everybody else, I think gets their shine. Al MacInnis gets shine in Calgary, I think, but probably nowhere else.
I would say so. I agree exactly with what Blake was saying, but given that they won 4 consecutive Stanley Cups and 19 consecutive Stanley Cup playoff series, which when you're looking at records that will never be broken, Denny Potvin,
that's where I
captained those teams.
That's where I go.
Yeah.
And in that, I'll throw another one out at you too. I know like and he did play well, like make no mistake about it. But, and again, I'm really going to age myself here. Going back, and I did this a few summers ago, going back to watch that 1976 Canada Cup, Potvin was the best player. It wasn't Bobby Orr. Potvin was the best. And we forget too, like not only could he put up points, he hit like a freight train. Like he was...
Like there's some guys on that list that are probably not protecting a 1-goal lead in the final minute, or if they are, they're doing so on stature more than necessarily. Potvin was all of those things.
So here's my not a complaint, but here's another. You always know that I love to come on your show and grouse about things. Here's my problem. Here's a problem that I have.
We should make a feature
Unfortunately, we'll never know the answer to. Players write books, coaches write books, referees write books, owners write books. General managers don't write books.
Yeah.
We hear a lot about doing, what's right for hockey and the good of the game and all of that. There's so much behind the scenes history of hockey that has been taken to the crematorium by various managers, and we'll never know the answers to. And to me, one of the big ones is how much and who were the players involved when Montreal offered Bill Torrey of the Islanders, Sam Pollock, Bill Torrey, two of the greats of all time. I think it was 5 players for the first overall pick that would have been Denny Potvin.
Wow.
And by the way,
you're so right about the GMs too.
They don't write books.
No, I know.
I mean, that's why I'm so happy that Brian Burke did. Like, there's only a couple that write. Why do managers? They have the most interesting information.
They want to die with
They do. Like, someone needs to tell them. There's a statute. Like, at some point, you can write and talk about all of these things. Like, we'll get guys on, tell us about that trade 35 years ago. Oh, well, I couldn't possibly say who they were offering. Why? Believe you me, there will be no hurt feelings from this point forward.
Okay, we gotta run. It's okay. All right, I'm boring you guys. Okay, anyway.
No, you're not boring us. We have another interview.
There you go. Rutherford should write one. That's who should.
He absolutely should.
Rutherford should. We gotta have a man a publishing deal.
Right.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
It's Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center, and if you have your tickets to the big game, why not make it a full experience? Stay downtown, here at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Harrison Price rate. Some blackout dates supply based on availability.
And why not surprise someone that you love with something special from Ben Moss sometime in the not too distant future? And if you feel if that conjures up worry just thinking about buying somebody jewelry, it's okay. That's what Ben Moss is there for. Proudly Canadian owned and operated with a history dating back over 100 years. They've got 5 locations, so one is near you: Abbotsford, Victoria, Chilliwack, Willowbrook, and Langley, Coquitlam Center. And they're all about customer satisfaction, so they take away that anxiety. Check out the large selection of Canadian mine diamonds, lab-grown diamonds, and they've got payment plans for those mine diamonds that will suit your needs. For more information, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, shine bright.
Well, the first bout of adversity for head coach Jesse Marsh with the Canadian men's national team. They lose 2-0 to Mexico at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. They surrender a very early goal, a late goal, and a goal in between that's called back on the narrowest of offsides. And they were sweating a missed penalty call or potential missed penalty call in the box last night. Blake, first talk to me about the performance, then talk to me about the penalty or lack of penalty and what you made of the call.
Yeah, I mean, I think
on-call.
it was a great job of coaching for Mexico, in that they knew Canada was going to try to punch them in the mouth early, and they said we're going to punch them in the mouth early, and I think they shocked Canada a little bit there, not only because they scored, but the goal, that opening minute goal, comes from very aggressive play by Mexico, which we hadn't seen from them up until this point. Canada did settle down after that. Like, ultimately, it's still 1-0 20 minutes in. And so at that point, it doesn't matter when that goal goes in. If you surrendered it in the 12th minute, it's still 1-0 through 20 minutes. Canada settled down enough. They get that great Jonathan David opportunity in front, set up by Ali Ahmed. But he blasted over the bar. And they didn't see enough from Jonathan David because they didn't get the ball on his feet enough. That PK is a PK. And that is a massive problem in CONCACAF. Like, I don't know how the camera was perfectly situated. Like, you see the foot kicking the foot. It can be no more clear than that.
When I saw it live, I didn't think it was a penalty because I thought it was two guys going for the ball and basically simultaneous. First time I saw it on replay, I wasn't even sure. But if you're telling me the rule is if the Canadian player gets the ball first and the Mexican player follows through and gets his foot, that's a PK, then I guess by the letter of the law, it's a PK. Jesse Marsh wanted a review at minimum in the postgame. The problem with CONCACAF is the officiating, or that they didn't go to review the process?
Both. But I don't think anybody trusts them even when they go to VAR that they're ready to make the right decision. One goal in soccer means more than one goal in pretty much every other sport. That changes the momentum. It drastically changes how a team plays from that point on. It's huge. So, but that's CONCACAF, and you know that going in. Those are the rules that you play by, and Canada's going to have to learn from it. Here's the thing: they have an easy chance to somewhat claw back the disappointment here with a win over the U.S. in the third place game, and also with the knowledge that if they beat the U.S., they send USA Soccer into a massive identity crisis with a year to go before the World Cup. Do they continue with Mauricio Pochettino, or do they make a last-second change with the year to go?
And if you missed this, the U.S. lost to Panama in the first semifinal on home pitch in front of a not particularly big
crowd.
Yeah, which is also like, boy, you're in 15 months out from the World Cup, and people not necessarily behind that team. So Canada, USA Sunday for the bronze medal here, the third place game, and just doesn't have the same luster as for the title.
But you've got to find a way. You've got to manufacture some urgency there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. As for Canada, so this was always going to be their biggest match of 2025 unless they won it and got to the final. So you have USA on Sunday at 3 p.m. Then that series, Canadian Shield series we were telling you about earlier in the week at BMO in Toronto in June, where they play Ukraine, Ivory Coast, and Romania in succession. And then they're heading off to the continent to play Wales. Ukraine, Ivory Coast, then off to the continent for Romania and Wales. So that's what's upcoming here now for Canada. And, Jesse Marsh sadly does not have a trophy to lift here, and the good vibes that would have carried them into that spring and then fall window.
That's a heavy schedule already for the A team, but I wonder, Matt, if it changes the Canadian approach to the Gold Cup, because they want to hoist a trophy rather than the B+ team or the A- team. I wonder if they convince a couple of the guys to hang around and load up that team. And the U.S. is,
and that's in June following this series.
But the U.S. might be thinking the exact same thing. Like, both teams are pretty desperate to feel good and look good right now. They both might load up for that Gold Cup. We'll see.
That'd be fun. Yeah. If you miss the Panama win, Cecilia Waterman scores the goal and then jumps onto the television set to hug Thierry Henry, who's there doing the commentary, the former French international and Arsenal legend. In the post-match, they interview him, and he said that Thierry was his idol growing up. He gave him his shirt. He signed it, and Henry was duly charmed and told Waterman he'll send him one of his Arsenal shirts in return. So a fantastic celebration. Not quite jumping into a snowbank, but that game had a little bit of panache and certainly a highlight that went around the world. Whitecaps tomorrow against Chicago at BC Place. They're calling this the Berhalter Bowl. We have talked about Seb Berhalter and how he has very much improved and really made himself a consistent figure in this undefeated Whitecaps season. We also know his father used to be the U.S. men's national team coach and now is the grand poobah of the Chicago Fire. So the Berhalter Bowl tomorrow at BC Place. Caps looking to go 5-0. They are the only undefeated team in MLS. They even have more than a match worth of points cushion atop the Western Conference table.
Not the only undefeated team. They're the only perfect
team.
Only
right.
Yes.
My bad. There are other teams that are without a loss.
Yeah.
But Vancouver is the only team to have won all of its matches. And Mariners fans, I think this is good news. Root Sports announcing for the cord cutters. Finally, your demands have been answered here. A direct-to-streaming option to watch all the Mariners games. They're asking $19.99 a month.
Yeah.
To watch what... I mean, if you love pitching...
if you love pitching...
There could be some pretty quick games there. There could be some pretty punchless games there from the M's, but nevertheless, they're available now on Root with a direct-to-streaming.
Given the feedback that I have received for MLS Season Pass for the same price, it's going to be interesting to see what they get out of that. Now, we don't get the blackouts that they do, so it doesn't affect Mariners fans here. But I guess they get blackouts there. I didn't know that they had them. Strange.
It's
but that's not cheap, Matt. Look, that's $19 a month.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. Like that's not cheap. I mean, it's about $1 a game, a little less than. So, I mean, you can rationalize and say, $1 for 3 hours of entertainment. If in fact you're going to sit there and watch all 62 or a large percentage there,
$9.99 sounds better. $9.99 sounds palatable. $19.99, I don't know.
Yeah, and look, the Mariners have already announced a number of promotions designed to get people in the stadium.
Yeah,
this year you can tell that they're worried, and you also know the natives are angry. Their ownership and management just doesn't want to spend, don't even want to constitute a trade to bring a bat in, and everybody in the world knows they need a bat. Poll question results. Surrey Mitsubishi poll question results from Thursday ask you, do the playoffs begin tonight for the Canucks? 53% of you said yes. 40% said already begun. Just 7% said no. Our old friend Yerke, I think the do or die began in Calgary, but it's not quite 4 results seal your fate from that point. So maybe it's been like a best of 15 or something. Had a Game 8 reference earlier. Best of 15.
Except 8 and 7 doesn't get you to the playoffs.
Yeah.
You know what? It'd be very close.
Yerke, you often put us on E's and O's. 8 and 7 ain't getting you there. Put you on E's and O's. Speaking of several from yesterday, PJ seemed to intimate that Utah was playing better than St. Louis. Not the case.
No.
I said that St. Louis is the hottest team in the league, which isn't wrong if you're looking from the Four Nations break on. Now 10-2-2 since the Four Nations break on. Carolina Hurricanes have won 8 in a row. So if you want to quibble with me on that, fair enough.
Different sample size.
And I said when we were talking about Kiefer Sherwood and how he needs to be noticeable, and sure enough he was with a goal and 10 hits. because the Blues defense is so big and experienced, and one of the guys I name-checked was Colton Parayko, not yet back from injury. So, anything to self-report, anything from the inbox?
Nope, nothing that I can see.
Okay. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with the program. Please do. Subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Blue Sky, live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time. And do support the community sponsors we keep telling you about. Keep it local.